Hello, my name is Keshwani. That's Keshwani, Keshwani. We are here because we're going to prepare for the math portion of the GRE. We have been solving math problems out of this book here, the official guide to the GRE, the revised general test. If you do not own this book already, purchase one immediately. You're going to need it in order to follow my work, in order to be able to follow my work. The problem that I'm about to solve is the one that you will find on page number 153, the very last problem on page 153, and today is our lesson number 48, day 48. Now when I say very last problem on this page, I just realized that there are only two there. The bottom one, the one about the slope. We are told that we have a line, they're calling it line K. So we are told that line K has x-intercept of -4. What does x-intercept means? X-intercept means the place where the line will cross the x-axis. So let's draw it here. You draw your x and y axis, and the line will cross this line K, they're calling the line K, they gave it a name, they christened it, will cross the x-axis at -4. So I'm going to draw it here. 1, 2. You don't have to be very precise, but you also cannot be bonkers. This from here to here is much longer than from here to here, I just realized. You have to be reasonable. 1, 2, 3, 4. So right here, -4. So it's -4, and of course the y is 0. Let's christen this point. Let's call it point P. Let's christen it, which means to give something or somebody a name. And we just gave it a name so that it's easier for us to discuss it. Christen. Just type in vocabulary instead of revised GRE math. Just type in vocabulary day 63 and you will learn this word christen. We're calling it point P. What else do we know? We know that line K passes through the midpoints of the line with endpoints 2, 9, 2, 9. Let's look at it. 2, 9, 1, 1, 2, and 9. Let's pretend this is 5. Well, let's not pretend it is 5. So 9 will be somewhere here. And that, let's give it a name here, let's call it A. Point A. The reason I want to call it A, we want to keep the P's and the Q's separate, which is going to be the points on line K. We're going to keep it separate from the other line, which is this line here. That's A. And it goes through 2, 0. 2, 0. Oh, right here. 2, 0. Let's call it, this is A. Let's call this B. 2, 0. So far so good. So far so good. The line K passes through the midpoint. Oh well, let's find out the midpoint then, okay? The midpoint so now we have begun the solution. The midpoint of 2, 9 and 2, 0 is simply from here to here. This is 0, this is 9 right here. So what's the middle of 0 and 9? If you take 0 and 9, divide by 2, that's your midpoint. That's 4.5. The midpoint of 2 and 9, 2, 9 and 2, 0 is simply 2 and 4.5. Right here, 4.5. Let's call it Q. 2 and 4.5. You see how we're keeping it separate? The A's and the B's with P's and the Q's, because they belong to different lines. This is our P, this is our Q. And the line that we are interested in is this line. Which has nothing to do with the dotted line A and B. We just told that this line that we were interested in, PQ, goes to the midpoint of A and B. We just located the midpoint. The midpoint is 2. That part does not change. The x coordinate does not change, obviously. B has an x coordinate of 2. B has an x coordinate of 2. Y coordinate is 9. The only thing changes is the y coordinate. From 0 to 9, the midpoint is 4.5. What is the question actually asking? What is the slope of the line? Alright. So what is the slope? What does slope measure? What does slope tell us? I need the room, so I'm going to erase this thing, okay? Because I can feel the sermon coming on now. I need the room, so I'm going to erase the top part. We are done with all of this thing. We're going to erase everything that we do not need. You have the question in front of you. We don't need any of this. That's it. Right there. We can erase this part too. The midpoint of 2, 9 and 2, 0 is 2 and 4.5 right there. So let's find the slope. What does slope measure? A very simple, very straightforward question. Can you tell me what does slope measure? And don't just sit there and go rise over run or change in y or change in x. I'm not asking you how to measure it. I'm asking you what is it? Can you articulate it in simple English language? What is it? What concept is it? What concept it is that that slope represents? Slope basically is a measure. Slope measures the steepness of a line. Slope tells us how steep a line is. Slope tells us how steep a given line is. The bigger the slope, the steeper the line. How do we measure the steepness of a line? How do we measure the slope of the line? Well, we ask ourselves, in order to measure the slope, we ask ourselves, how much change do we see in y? How much change do we see? How far up we go? How far up we go for a given distance that we travel horizontally. For example, here, how much are we traveling horizontally? From here, P, to this point here, how much are we traveling? From -4 to a +2. For a -4 to positive, from -4 to +2, we have traveled a distance of 6 units along x-axis horizontally. The question is, as a result of traveling from here to here, how far up did we go? We went from the coordinate of 0 for y coordinate of 0. As a result of traveling from here to here, we have traveled 4.5 units to the top, from here to here. 4.5 units, from here to here is 4.5 units. What this tells us is that what it tells us is that the slope of this line can be expressed as, what it tells us is that for every 6 units change in x, y changes by 4.5 units. And there you go, that's your slope. That's your slope. I'm going to change the marker, this is getting very light. That's it. The only difference is that that is not how we actually express a slope in mathematical terminology, in mathematical way. We have to express it as an equation. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to erase all of this thing. It says slope. When we're trying to figure out the slope, we ask ourselves, what is it? What is the question that we ask ourselves? We ask ourselves, how far up we go? How far up are we going from this point, from moving from P to Q? How far up did we go? Well, we went from along x-axis, P is along x-axis, we went from 0, the y-coordinate being 0, to 4.5. We went from 0 to 4.5. From 0 to 4.5. So that's the question we ask ourselves. How far up we go for a given distance that we travel horizontally? We travel from P to Q. How much distances we travel horizontally? Listen carefully. Even though we are going from P to Q, we are looking for horizontal distance, which is from P to B. P to B, we went from -4 to +2. We traveled a distance of 6 units. 4 on this side, 4 on the left hand side, 2 on the right hand side. So that was the answer. That the answer is, the slope here equals, slope equals here, the answer to this question, how far up did we go for a given distance that we travel horizontally? The answer to this question is, for every 6 units change in x, for every 6 units travel along the x-axis, for every 6 units along the distance that we travel horizontally, the y changes, we traveled 4.5 units up. That's it. The way we express that mathematically is this. Slope tells us what was the change in y for a given change in x, which is exactly what that is. This is how we are traditionally used to seeing it. Slope being expressed as change in y over change in x. This concept here is exactly what this is here. It tells us what was the change in x. What was the change in x for a given change in y? The y here changed by 4.5 units. So we're going to make a note here. Change in y was 4.5 units. Now, for how many units change in x? For 6 units change in x. From here to here it changed by 6. So the change in x was 6. That's it. That's your answer. The only trouble is that this 4.5 business, I don't like it. It's better to write it as a whole number. That's the only way you're going to be able to write the answers in the exam. So how do I convert 4.5 into a whole number? Multiply the top and the bottom by 2. Multiply the top and the bottom by 2. That's all. Because 4.5 times 2 is 9. And 6 times 2 is 12. I'm going to erase this part because I feel constrained. That's it. That's your answer. 9 by 12. And if you can just write that in, they will accept it. The computer will accept it. Or if you want to reduce it, divide the top and the bottom by 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Voila, that's your answer. 3/4. That's it. Some people talk about slope as being rise over run, which is the exact same concept as what we've been talking about. It's just that they use different terminology. This rise is what we're talking about, the change in y. We're asking ourselves, how much does the y change? How much does the y change, which is your rise, for a given change in x, which is what they're calling run. The run is what they mean by the distance that you travel horizontally. We went from -4 to +2. The run was 6 units. The horizontal distance that we traveled was 6 units as a result of moving up from a 0 to 4.5. So change in y was 4.5, change in x was 6. And then to convert this 4.5 into a whole number, we multiply the top and the bottom by 2. Voila. And as a result, 4.5 times 2 is 9. 9 divided by 12 is 9, and 6 times 2 is 12. And then you divide the top and the bottom by 3. That's it. We are done. I hope I did not explain too much. Sometimes I have a tendency of doing that. But I always feel that it's always a better idea as a teacher to explain a little bit too much than is necessary, as opposed to doing the other way around. Okay? I will see you tomorrow on day number 49, where we will begin questions on the following page, which are interesting questions because this on the following page, turn to page 154 and you'll know what I'm talking about. On 154, these are the new type of questions, hence the revised GRE, where there are more than one answer choices that are correct, and your job is to make sure that you check mark every one of them. Sometimes there are 4 answer choices in the given question, sometimes there are 5, and sometimes there are 6 or 7. And your job is to check mark all of the answer choices that are correct. I'll see you tomorrow on day 49. Okay? Bye now.